I know it's wrong, but I have to admit that I cheated on my husband to do something crazy with her mom. Let me take you through the story to see how it went. It all started with the family gathering at our home, routine tradition that was meant to be comfortable and familiar. The air was filled with the aroma of roasted chicken, garlic bread, and the faint sweetness of freshly baked apple pie. My husband, Victor, had just invited his mother Frances over for dinner. It was a casual gesture, nothing out of the ordinary, as Victor often sought to strengthen the fragile relationship he had with his mom. Frances was an intriguing woman, someone whose presence always commanded attention without much effort. With her silver hair styled elegantly, a posture that exuded confidence, and a warm, melodious voice, she was the kind of woman who left an impression. There was a quiet intensity about her that could make any room feel smaller when she entered. That evening, I found myself hyper-aware of her presence in a way I hadn't before. Perhaps it was the way she smiled when she complimented the meal I had prepared, or how her eyes lingered on mine a moment too long when I poured her a second glass of wine. It felt harmless, a moment of shared recognition that I quickly dismissed. As the night unfolded, we sat around the dining table, laughing over Victor's stories about his college days and Frances's dry humor that often left us in stitches. I couldn't help but notice the ease with which Frances carried herself. Her wit sharp but never overbearing. There was a way she listened, really listened, that made you feel like the most important person in the world, even in a crowded room. After dinner, Victor disappeared into the den to finish something, leaving Frances and me alone in the kitchen. I tried to busy myself, but I could feel Frances's gaze on me. "You've outdone yourself tonight," she said, breaking the quiet. Her voice was warm, genuine, but there was a flicker of something else there, something I wasn't ready to name. "Thank you," I replied, glancing at her over my shoulder. "I'm glad you enjoyed it. You've been good for Victor," she added, stepping closer. "He's lucky to have someone who grounds him." I smiled politely, unsure how to respond. "We make it work," I said softly, my hands busy drying a glass. Frances leaned against the counter, her expression thoughtful. "Marriage isn't easy. Trust me, I've learned that the hard way." There was a weight to her words that made me pause. I set the glass down and turned to face her fully. "You seem like you figured out a lot though," I offered. "You carry yourself with so much confidence." She chuckled, the sound rich and musical. "That comes with age. Or maybe it's just the ability to hide insecurities better than most." The way she said it made me feel like she was letting me in on a secret, and I found myself smiling in return. There was an undeniable magnetism about her, a pull I couldn't quite shake. We talked for what felt like hours, even though it must have been only minutes. She shared stories about her youth, her regrets, her lessons, and I listened intently, forgetting for a moment that I was supposed to be finishing the dishes. There was a lightness to our conversation, but beneath it, an undercurrent of something unspoken. Every glance, every smile felt loaded, though I couldn't pinpoint why. When Victor returned to the room, I felt a strange sense of relief and disappointment. The tension dissipated, but it left behind a quiet hum that stayed with me long after Frances had said her goodbyes, and the evening came to an end. That night, as Victor slept soundly beside me, I replayed the conversation in my mind, analyzing every word, every glance. I told myself it was nothing a harmless interaction with my mother-in-law, but the way my heart raced at the memory told a different story. I didn't know it then, but that evening was just the beginning. What followed would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself, my marriage, and the limits of what I was capable of. Still, the next day felt like any other. Victor was busy with work calls, his laptop perched on the dining table as he darted between emails and phone calls. I spent the morning cleaning up after the dinner party, but my thoughts kept drifting to Francisa's laughter, the warmth in her voice, and the way her eyes had lingered on me just a second too long. I shook my head, willing the memories to fade. It was ridiculous to let a few fleeting moments take up so much space in my mind. Yet the harder I tried to suppress them, the more vivid they became. By the time afternoon rolled around, I found myself scrolling through my phone, debating whether to text her a polite thank you for joining us the night before. I hesitated for longer than I cared to admit before finally typing a message. Thank you for coming over last night. It was nice having you here, and I'm glad you enjoyed the dinner. I pressed send and set the phone down, my heart thumping against my rib cage like I'd just done something forbidden. Minutes passed, stretching into what felt like hours, until the screen lit up with her reply. The pleasure was all mine. You're a wonderful host and an even better conversation tease. I read the words twice, searching for any hidden meaning, though I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Her response was polite, even complimentary, but it was the last sentence that lingered. The next message came before I could respond. If you're free sometime, I'd love to continue our conversation. There's so much more I'd like to hear about you. I stared at the screen, the weight of her words sinking in. My first instinct was to brush it off, to chalk it up to harmless curiosity or polite small talk. But the part of me that had felt so invisible in recent years clung to the attention like a lifeline. Sure, that sounds nice, I replied before I could overthink it. Her response came quickly. Tomorrow afternoon, I know a quiet cafe near the park where we could talk without interruptions. I hesitated. Meeting her felt like crossing a line I wasn't sure I wanted to approach, but the allure of being seen and truly seen was too strong to resist. I found myself typing, "Tomorrow works. See you then." The cafe was cozy with dim lighting and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. Frances was already seated at a corner table when I arrived, a cup of cappuccino in front of her and a magazine folded neatly to one side. Gestured as I approached, her smile warm and inviting. "You're punctual," she said, pulling out a chair for me. I smiled, sitting down as my pulse quickened. I try to be. The conversation started off innocently enough. We talked about the weather, the latest news, and little anecdotes from the previous evening, but as the minutes passed, the tone shifted. Frances leaned in slightly, her eyes locked on mine as she asked questions that felt more personal. "What made you fall in love with Victor?" she asked, her voice soft but probing. The question caught me off guard and I hesitated before answering. "He made me feel secure," I said, the words coming out more wistfully than I intended. Back then, he was so attentive, so reliable. It felt like we could build something lasting together. Frances nodded, her expression thoughtful. And the weight of her question hung in the air. I glanced down at my coffee, unsure how to respond. "Now things are different," I admitted. "Life gets in the way." "I suppose that's natural," she said gently. "But it doesn't mean you have to lose yourself in the process." I looked up, meeting her gaze. There was an intensity in her eyes that made my breath hitch. For a moment, the noise of the cafe faded, and it felt like we were the only two people in the world. "I can see why Victor fell for you," she said, her voice dropping to an ear whisper. "You have this spark about you. It's magnetic." Heat rose to my cheeks and I glanced away trying to steady my thoughts. "That's kind of you to say." "It's the truth," she replied. The rest of the conversation blurred into a haze of laughter and shared stories. By the time we left the cafe, I couldn't deny the connection growing between us. As we stood by the door, Frances turned to me, her expression serious. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "It's been a long time since I've had a conversation like this." "Me too," I admitted, my voice barely audible. She hesitated, her hand hovering near mine as if she wanted to reach out, but thought better of it. "Maybe we could do this again sometime." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'd like that." Ossie walked away, the air felt heavier, charged with the weight of what had just transpired. I told myself it was just our friendly meeting, but deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure if I could stop it or if even wanted to. But I was so unaware of what would still come. The days leading up to our next meeting were filled with a restless energy I couldn't shake. I busied myself with the usual chorus laundry errands, dinner planning, but Mimond was elsewhere. I kept replaying moments from the cafe. The way Francisca's had lingered, the warmth in her words, and the subtle spark that seemed to pass between us. It wasn't just their conversation that had stayed with me. It was how she made me feel seen, heard, important.